Good evening, and welcome to the 4th annual Healing Sound Concert of the Simply Healthy Creating Sustainable Communities, a Simply Living Fair and Wellness Expo here in Bloomington, Indiana. I'm Patricia Coleman, the president and founder of the Indiana Holistic Health Network, which is a project, along with the local Food Bloomington Network, of the Green Dove Network Incorporated, a nonprofit, which is also a project under the Center for Sustainable Living. And I feel very fortunate to live here in Bloomington with so many wonderful people and to just have the opportunity to be a part of the community in this way. I would like to invite up the Reverend Marianne Macklin to offer our opening words this evening. She is co-minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Bloomington, Indiana. This congregation, which affirms the wisdom of all the world's religions, was recently recognized nationally as a breakthrough congregation for their growth in numbers and depth. Reverend Macklin believes music can be key to accessing whatever is sacred for our spirit. She often quotes Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, "Take a music bath once or twice a week for a few seasons, and you will find that it is to the soul what the water bath is to the body." And to that, I'd like to add, if you want more information about this community as a breakthrough community, there's a link to the video that was made by this congregation, and it is on the Simply Healthy Fair website. Welcome, Reverend Marianne Macklin.
The bell is one of the most ancient instruments in bringing people together, gathering people together in many spiritual traditions. It is also known to bring us very much into the present moment, bringing us home to ourselves, which I think is very much a part of healing. And tonight, we will hear many different types of sound, music, spoken word, silence, instruments. One of them bringing us into the present moment, bringing us home to ourselves, and bringing us into, I believe, a place of healing. I will say that some of my forebears are Quaker, and I have spent time in Quaker worship, non-programmed Quaker worship, which is the silent worship. And when I was at a retreat center doing that for several months, I missed music because for me, spiritually, music just takes me to a different place within myself than any other component. And I would value silence as a way of worshiping. And I will say there are other Quakers that have music as part of their tradition. But it really came home to me more than that. For me, when I'm in a setting, a worship setting, or any type of spiritual setting or healing setting, that having music present is over 50% for me there, even what is to add to what is being said. Along with that, for those of you who know me, I always like to look at research a little bit, see what it says. And I want to talk about music just a tad as closing my comments tonight. And I recently discovered an article about Dr. Mike Miller. He's at the University of Maryland Medical Center, and he does research, cardiovascular research. Now, originally, he was looking at laughter and how that affects cardiovascular health, and then eventually he turned to music. He says, turns out music may be one of the best de-stressors, either by playing or even listening to music, that there is. Using high-tech imaging, Miller measured blood size as people listened to music. And the results did not surprise him. The inner lining of the blood vessels relaxed, opened up, and produced chemicals that are protective to the heart. And when you think of the heart as one of the great places of healing in our body, it makes a lot of sense. He does warn, if you're listening to music that you really don't like, the opposite does happen. You have a stress reaction to that. So it's important to pay attention. There were two other studies that were mentioned, and I just want to say briefly what was said about them. A recent study at Stanford University found that elderly patients who were diagnosed with depression gained self-esteem and saw an improvement in their mood when they were visited by a music therapist. And also at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, they used music as part of their cardiovascular surgery healing program to promote relaxation, reduce tension, stress, and anxiety. Because music helps these patients relax, it decreases their pain, improves their moods, and helps them to sleep better, especially during recovery. So these are just, I like talking about some of the spiritual traditions, but I always love when there's a little research that comes along that also says, hey, yeah, this really is working this way, and it's being used in all types of institutions at this time, and it's wonderful to have this healing concert tonight. One of the end parts of this article mentioned that listening to the same song or music over and over doesn't increase your health as it goes along. It's actually a variety of music that tends to promote health and wellness. And that's what we have tonight. Again, sound, music, spoken word, silence, spoken word and music, all different types of sound. And thanks to Patricia for putting this together.
Before we go on, I need to make a brief announcement. I want to say that due to varied circumstances, 3 of the presenters will not be here this evening. Tom Rosnowski, Elaine Barker from this community because of the broken clavicle, and also John Kay from the Ethnomusicology or Traditional Arts Indiana because of a loss in his family. So I send my thoughts, my prayers to each of them. And now I would like to welcome up Deb Phelps and Carol Marks. Deb Phelps is a graduate of the IU School of Music and wears several hats in her life: music therapist, composer, singer, guitarist, and registered nurse. She works as an oncology nurse and is completing advanced music therapy training in the Bonney method of guided imagery and music. This technique focuses on a music-centered exploration of consciousness that uses specifically sequenced classical music programs to stimulate and sustain a dynamic and unfolding of inner experiences, offering persons many possibilities for wholeness. Currently, she is working in the Bloomington area with groups of women with fibromyalgia. She will be accompanied by Carol Marks reading poetry. Carol earned a degree in the theater from the University of Indianapolis a long time ago. She now lives in southern Indiana and wishes she understood plumbing better. She writes poetry because she can't help it, and thinks the new American dream means that soon people will choose to do the right thing more often than the profitable thing. Welcome, Deb and Carol.
Thank you for being here. The well. Well, well, well. The bottom of a well is chilly and cold. Treading water, I look up and see starlight at noonday. Unlooked for, red-winged blackbird's song tugs at my heart. Like a Sundance rawhide tether through the skin of my chest, the song yanks me up into daylight. Dry around the warmth of sun-filled spring. The well is still there behind me, but it doesn't need me now. Light behind cloud. I know the sight of autumn with my eyes closed. There are whispers that have color. Orange leaves chase each other in the gutter. They skid around the red ones already there. Lily pads dried by summer wind shake against each other, and their stems rattle fitfully in bursts of golden brown. The freshness of the blue-gray wind mentions December as it passes. Leaves and grasses skitter dry by the road, speak of umber, brown, and burnt sienna. I am doubly, doubly blessed to taste the feast of this world, hear it on my skin, feel it in my ears, see it with all my senses clear. Always searching for the light behind cloud. Belongs to the earth. That which belongs to the planet is not mine. These things belong to the earth. The hurricane that took away the Christmas oranges, and the oranges. The katydid resting on the porch screen, turning one way and then another, uncomfortable in the November sun. The cat fight outside my window at 3 a.m. The praying mantis in perfectly tailored olive green jacket and startling chartreuse petticoat. The mantis's shadow as she turns her triangular head on an unbelievably delicate neck, looking one way and then another, searching perhaps for her husband, unaccountably missing, who also belongs to the earth. Lucky and wild. There's a little old coyote in the backyard scouting for a 2-rabbit lunch, crouched behind the elm tree in the whiskey tall grass, waiting and sniffing the breeze. Watching at the window, I'm happy he is thinning out the eaters of my lettuces and snap peas. Life is such a restaurant. I hope my neighbor's sheepdog is scanning the meadow for this coyote's brother. A coyote in the backyard. On the edge of memory, I can't decide, is Coyote here to trick me? Wake me up with a yippee-tie-I-O? Tell me a joke or tell me the truth and make me feel lucky and wild? Crows. The day before a lunar eclipse, I wake to hear crows chatting in the elm tree. I climb to meet them. Spirit self-sure, I can understand their guttural, self-referential mentioning if I can just get a little closer. Dressed like priests, they settle their wings after flight, remark upon the things that crows care about. Thinking of myself as nun-like, white and black, a bird of a different feather. I hover hopefully, listening to crows' small talk until they scatter heavily downwind, like big, slow bats, like black kites with broken strings. Pawpaws. A ripe pawpaw fell into my hand, ready to go, somehow overlooked by deer, raccoon, and possum, but still hanging where I could reach it. The size of my fist almost. The skin gives just enough to say it's ripe, though I've never touched a ripe pawpaw or any other kind in my life. Carried carefully up the hill through the September evening, it's way too soft to put in my pocket. After supper, sliced in half lengthwise, its big brown seeds a half-hidden toothy grin. Pale yellow fruit is creamier than banana, softer than papaya, with a wild tannic aftertaste like rhubarb or persimmons. Will eating such a large wild fruit make me feral? In the morning, will I sniff the air to see which way the wind blows? Will I glance sidelong at a suspicious-looking trash can or cedar tree? Will I walk in circles before I lie down for a nap? Will I feel a sudden urge to run faster than any of the local dogs? Will eating the flesh of a pawpaw make me lean and sinewy, graceful as a deer? Or will my gait be like a possum's, hesitant, nearsighted, focused mainly on the next pawpaw? The skin of this first pawpaw lies on my blue willow plate, a deflated green balloon, the 12 seeds beside it, shiny and brown, like a pile of spare change. They are certainly magic beans. If I plant them, I'll get lots of company when the pawpaws come on. These hands are careful, measuring flour and eggs and shortening onto the countertop, the beginning of chicken and noodles. These hands worked in the garden, ironed suits at the dry cleaners, sewed my mother's wedding dress, and bathed us when we were small. There is a unit of measurement which has no name. It is the distance from the end of her right forefinger to the first knuckle, marked off with the end of her thumb. It means just a little. It means the size of a seam allowance. It means the depth of the frosting. It means how close he came. It means the space between me and the spirit of my grandmother, whose hands, spirit thin, transparent and light, still move through fields of bluebells. Blackberries for supper. She used to say, well, she just felt a little peaked, which is not the same as peaked. She felt peaked plenty, I would imagine, with 4 children, 3 husbands, and 13 grandchildren. We gave her plenty to keep her interested. When I feel peaked, I think of her standing next to the wringer washer, having just made butterscotch candy and blackberry cobbler. And the scent of wet laundry, candy, and blackberries smells like everything is just fine. Blackberry cobbler is the simplest thing. It has actual healing qualities. She had no idea, but maybe she did. I was feeling peaked. I made blackberry cobbler with a pound of berries and 2 pie crusts and a little brown sugar. I ate half of it and went to bed. I felt better in the morning. All my uncles. All my uncles find God outside, leaning against that fence, hat pulled down over his eyes like a hunting buddy, arriving early or late, ready and willing when the time comes to help with the naming of cows and the planting of corn, the stringing of bluegill on a line, the tying up of clematis and tomato vines, pointing out the angle of a shadow on a lighthouse, the color of a house-sized chunk of granite, placement of a weeping cherry tree, and where the garden's paving stones, new made, should go. Outside, my uncles are God-befriended and glad. I dreamed I met Vermeer. I dreamed I met Vermeer in a little dark bar. I was drinking something red. He was drinking beer. He said he had been reading Proust and didn't understand him. I said I thought he and Proust both had good ideas about light. Vermeer said he sure could tell Proust wasn't Dutch. I asked him how his work was going. He said it's hard to concentrate. We have 11 kids and 10 of them are still at home. He wished he could afford studio space somewhere else. I said I had a spare room and he could paint at my place. But Vermeer just finished his beer, and when I looked again, he was gone. Vermeer left. Vermeer left his stuff in my garage. Primed canvases, bags of lapis lazuli, chunks of yellow ochre, mortars, pestles, bottles of linseed oil, a mirror, a stack of blue and white tiles, and a jar full of light that came through a window in Amsterdam after rain in the early morning.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed all of it. Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome Daryl Breeden and Steve Pollitt. Daryl Breeden is a longtime activist in the peace, justice, and environmental community. He is also a small business owner of Breeden Trucking. Steve Pollard lived in Indianola, Mississippi from 1953 to 1959, ages 3 to 9, where he was blessed to hear a young man playing a national steel guitar and a small group of singers picking their way through the neighborhood cotton patches. From Mississippi, his family moved to eastern Massachusetts, where he studied on basketball and church choir for the remainder of his childhood. Steve began playing blues harp and Irish whistle at age 21 and now plays on a forest of primitive and ethnic woodwinds. Welcome.
Start us off with some Shruti, Bach's, and Hulusi. those few steps by man upon her distant shore, sun beside and the earth below, moon behind and the earth below, little planet tossed in space. So all we know and all we can replace, swirl a cloud across her face.
From the book, Thinking Like a Mountain, Towards a Council of All Beings, the poem Beastry by Joanna Mason. Short-tailed albatross, whooping crane, gray wolf, peregrine falcon, hawks-billed turtle, jaguar, rhinoceros. In Geneva, the international tally of endangered species, long kept to date in loose-leaf volumes, has surely now been downloaded to CD or floppy disk, but the numbers are overwhelming. How then are we to mourn this passing of life? What funerals or farewells are appropriate? Reed warbler, swallowtail butterfly, Manx shearwater, India python, howler monkey, sperm whale, blue whale. Dive me deep, brother whale, in this time we have left. Deep in our mother ocean where once I swam gilled and finned, the salt from those early seas still runs in my tears, but tears are too meager now. Give me a song for a sadness too vast for my heart, for a rage too wild for my throat. Anteater, antelope, grizzly bear, brown bear, Bactrian camel, Nile crocodile, American alligator. Ooze me, gator, in the mud whence I came. Belly me slow in the rich primordial soup, cradle of our molecules. Let me wallow again before we drain your swamp, before we pave it over and blast it to ash. Gray bat, ocelot, marsh mouse, blue pike, red kangaroo, Aleutian goose, Audouin's seagull. Quick, lift off. Sweep me high over the coast and out, farther out. Don't land here. Oil spills coat the beach, the rocks, the sea. I cannot spread my wings glued with tar. Fly me from what we have done. Fly me far. Golden parakeet, African ostrich, Florida panther, Galapagos penguin, imperial pheasant, leopard, Utah prairie dog. Hide me in a hedgerow, badger, can't you find one? Dig me a tunnel through leaf mold and roots under the trees that once defined our fields. My heart is bulldozed and plowed over. Burrow me a labyrinth deeper than longing. Thick-billed parrot, zone-tail pigeon, desert bandicoot, southern bald eagle, California condor, lotus blue butterfly. Crawl me out of here, caterpillar. Spin me a cocoon. Wind me to sleep in a shroud of silk, where in patience my bones will dissolve. I'll wait for as long as all creation, if only it will come again, and I take wing. Atlantic Ridley turtle, pearly mussel, helmeted hornbill, sea otter, humpback whale, monk seal, harp seal. Swim me out beyond the ice floes, mama, where are you? Boots squeeze my ribs and clubs drum my fur. And the white world goes black with the taste of my blood. Gibbon, gorilla, swamp deer, musk deer, cheetah, chinchilla, Asian elephant, African elephant. Sway me slowly through the jungle. There must still be jungle somewhere. My heart drips with green secrets. Hose me down by the water hole, there's buckshot in my hide. Tell me the old stories while you can remember. Fantail flycatcher, flap-shelled tortoise, crested ibis, hook-bill kite, bobcat, frigate bird. In the time when his world, like ours, was ending, Noah had a list of animals too. We picture him standing at the gangplank, calling their names, checking them off his scroll. Now we too are checking them off ours. Ivory-billed woodpecker, brown pelican, Florida manatee, Canada goose. We reenact Noah's ancient drama, but in reverse like a film running backwards. The animals exiting. Ferret, curlew, cougar, wolf. Your tracks grow fainter. Wait, wait! This is a hard time. Don't leave us alone in a world we have wrecked. Thank you. Thank you. Introduced to you again, Steve Paulett. It's been a wonderful meeting, getting to meet Steve and doing this poem with him. He just adds so much to it with his instruments and the feeling he plays for them. He's also known as Bamboo Steve, is that right? Yeah, Bamboo Steve. I'm so fascinated by the instruments that he plays, and I think he has another song he'd like to do for you.
one little thing.
All right. Very quickly, won't take much time, but it's so good to be here and be in such, even a small group, such a wonderful group of people who come out for these kinds of causes. I grew up in southern Indiana, and I've often said that I was a Sims baby. If you know what SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, I was Sims baby, which is southern Indiana macho male syndrome. And it's nearly as fatal. Fortunately, I grew out of it. But I remember years ago, the reason I'm thinking of this, because today I think it's the first day, or yesterday may have been, of deer season, and down where we live now it sounds like a war zone. And I think of all the animals and how I grew up in that culture, wanted to be the last of the great white hunters. And I remember the last deer that I killed and shot as a sport, and that we're in that season now. And but then to do a poem like Joanna Macy's poem, after having come out of that culture, it really it meant so much to me to learn this and be able to do it, and then to be associated with people like yourself. So thanks for having me, and thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name's Patricia Crouch, and it's my honor tonight to introduce Patricia Coleman. Patricia is a poet, storyteller, and visual artist. She has been involved with the Bloomington Storytellers Guild for about 15 years. She has presented in the Indianapolis Children's Museum, on university campuses, coffee houses, and other places. She is a member of 5 Women Poets Writing Workshop and host of the Heart Rock Poetry Series and open mic at Rachel's Cafe. Patricia.
I'm going to be telling a version of The Tree of Peace, which is a Native American story framed around the time period when the Confederation of Nations was formed here in the United States. And actually, most of you, or many of you, may be aware that our very Constitution was modeled after the Federation of the Native Tribes in the eastern, northern United States of this country. Hiawatha was very pleased to see that the 5 tribes in his area had now all agreed to come together and form a band of peace. He'd sent out a word, and this word had been carried by all of the runners across his region, announcing that every able-bodied person was to make the journey to the place which we now could call northern New York, to the place where the largest tree stood standing. And so people traveled for many, many days until they arrived at this place. On the given day, silence. Even though there were thousands and thousands of people gathered here, people had come, even if they were on crutches, they had come any way that they could, because they knew that even though most of them would not be able to hear any of the words that were being spoken, they knew that this was a historic occasion for all of them. And they also knew that at any sacred gathering, it was begun in silence. And so for 3 days, these people were essentially silent, save for the children and the animals who were among them, but basically silent. And then on the 4th day, that is when the oratory would begin. At that point, Hiawatha, or some say it was a person named Daganoweda, went to the front of the group. Well, they had cleared a huge circle out around this tree, and all of the chiefs from all the major tribes had created a great circle. He began with, "Thank you for coming here today. I want you all to understand that this is a new beginning for all of us. You have to understand that we have all been living a great lie. And the great lie comes because we have accepted this thing called the tree of war. And this gathering is all of us agreeing to let that story end here and now." As I said, most of the people who were there, they couldn't hear any of these words being spoken, but that didn't matter. They could feel the energy of this place. So Hiawatha nodded, and all of these great beings circled the tree, and they began to chant in a very soft hum. And then one among them went up to the tree and asked the tree if it understood what was about to happen. And then the people believed that they could feel the vibration of this tree as it responded with yes. And some even say that they heard the voice of the tree respond, saying, "I knew long that this would be my last season, and I am honored to be here for all of you." Hiawatha held up a hand and said, "Can you believe that this hand can take down this great tree?" No one said anything. And Hiawatha said, "Yes, of course. This hand and your hand and my hand together, we can take down this great tree." And please remember, the tree understood what was happening here and what it was giving of itself. At another nod of his head, people went forward, and Hiawatha gave a sign and said, "I'd like you to begin digging. No tools, only your hands." And then they began to dig at the roots, all the soil around the roots of this tree, until there was a huge, great, empty ring around the tree, and all of its roots were exposed. Someone said a prayer. No one really knew the exact moment that the tree began to tip. But slowly, 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 this great tree began to tip over to the side. And somehow it had been perfectly managed so that not one single person or animal was hurt. After that, Hiawatha said, "Now we have a great opportunity to end this lie about the tree of war, which has polluted generations of our children and which will continue to pollute all of us beings on this earth. As long as we continue to believe that we have no choices, as long as we continue to listen to those who would rather find fault and, well, you know where I'm going with this." And at that, Hiawatha said, "I'm going to be the first to give up my weapons of war." And he tossed his weapons into this great hole that was now opened where this tree had been. And then the other chiefs, all one after another, began to follow. And because the greatest of the chiefs among them were giving up their weapons, because they did truly want to create something different for themselves and their children, soon this huge open hole that had held this tree was now filled with all of these weapons of these people. And then another sign was given, and Hiawatha asked them to please now cover all of these weapons so that they would be lost for the people's memory. And after a while of moving soil and moving soil, there was just this great mound. And then Hiawatha said to the people, "Now we are going to begin a new tradition here. We are going to plant a tree of peace." He had someone bring out a evergreen tree, which he had been carefully keeping for this occasion. They planted this tree on the very top of this great hill. Hiawatha said, "This tree will mark for us and for all those who come after us this day when we all make the choice to live for peace instead of war." And he went on because some people believe that Hiawatha was a member of what the tribes called the bird tribe, or some spirit beings who were there watching over them. Others say they were a band of angels. Who knows? I don't know. But Hiawatha went on talking, and he said, "We know that there will be others coming, and they will confuse us, and we will forget who we are, and we will forget all that we have learned here, and we will lose everything. But this tree will remain here, and one day the children's 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 children's, many, many generations from now, will remember this story, because even if the people's minds forget that they want peace, the stories will remain, and one day people will remember that this tree is here." So now it is up to each of us to remember that this tree is here. There's some people that I'm connected with who believe that if you travel up north to northern New York State, to where the Onondaga Indians reside, that this tree is still there, and that this tree is hoping, waiting, wanting for each and every one of us to remember that every day, every moment, we have a choice to embrace the thoughts of a tree of peace, or to hold on firmly to a tree of war. And so I leave it up to you to decide which tree you want to feed. Thank you very much. In closing, I would like to read a poem from what a person I think of as one of our great American treasures, a poet, Native American, Joy Harjo. It's a poem from her book, How We Became Human. It's a map to the next world. And she wrote it for Desiree Kiera Chi. In the last days of the fourth world, I wish to make a map for those who would climb through the hole in the sky. My only tools were the desires of humans as they emerged from the killing fields, from the bedrooms and the kitchens. For the soul is a wanderer with many hands and feet. The map must be of sand and can't be read by ordinary light. It must carry fire to the next tribal town for renewal of spirit. In the legend are instructions on the language of the land, how it was we forgot to acknowledge the gift as if we were not in it or of it. Take note of the proliferation of supermarkets and malls, the altars of money. They best describe the detour from grace. Keep track of the errors of our forgetfulness. The fog steals our children while we sleep. Flowers of rage spring up in the desperation. Monsters are born there of nuclear anger. Trees of ashes wave goodbye to goodbye, and the map appears to disappear. We no longer know the names of the birds here, how to speak to them by their personal names. Once we knew everything in this lush promise. What I am telling you is real and is printed in a warning on the map. Our forgetfulness stalks us, walks the earth behind us, leaving a trail of paper diapers, needles, and wasted blood. An imperfect map will have to do, little one. The place of entry is the sea of your mother's blood, your father's small death as he longs to know himself in another. There is no exit. The map can be interpreted through the wall of the intestine, a spiral on the road of knowledge. You will travel through the membrane of death, smell cooking from the encampment where our relatives make a feast of fresh deer meat and corn soup in the milk sky. They have never left us. We abandoned them for silence. And when you take your next breath as we enter the fifth world, there will be no X, no guidebook with words you can carry. You will have to navigate by your mother's voice, renew the song she is singing. Fresh courage glimmers from planets and lights the map printed with the blood of history, a map you will have to know by your intention, by the language of sons. When you emerge, note the tracks of the monster slayers where they entered the cities of artificial light and killed what was killing us. You will see red cliffs. They are the heart, contain the ladder. The white deer will greet you when the last human climbs from the destruction. Remember the hole of shame marking the act of abandoning our tribal grounds. We were never perfect, yet the journey we make together is perfect on this earth who was once a star and made the same mistakes as humans. We might make them again, she said. Crucial to finding the way is this: there is no beginning and there is no end. You must make your own map. I want to say again, thank you, each one of you, for being here, for all of your lovely, lovely gifts. And I am very honored to be a part of your community. Good night.